good news you can use for your life. If you want to get the info that'll help you throughout your life, yeah.
They get nervous, right? And one of most people's largest expense in or even before retirement for the most part is their mortgage. And so what we've done a lot of is help people say, okay, I've got a $300,000 home and $100,000 mortgage, and I'm paying $1,000 a month in this mortgage, right? If something goes wrong, right? If I lose my ability to generate income or my investments see a decline like they did at the beginning, and we've seen some volatility just this week, right? It's been a bouncy ball. And so if I have to take a withdrawal from my investments when that market's down, I'm realizing those losses, and it can have a very devastating effect on my portfolio. But if I have to make a traditional 30-year mortgage payment, I have no choice but to take that withdrawal in order to pay that mortgage. And so what we've done for a lot of people is say, okay, let's illustrate a scenario. Let's say this economy stays bad. Let's say we see a downturn in the market, your investments are down, and you're concerned about taking these withdrawals. And let's say you lose your income. So what if we didn't make that mortgage payment? What would that look like? So the strategy there is replace that existing mortgage with a reverse line of credit, right? So now I have full optionality. A lot of people think in a reverse mortgage, you automatically don't make payments, right? What it does is gives you the option of whether or not to make your monthly mortgage payment. You still pay property taxes and homeowners insurance and keep the house in good condition, all those things like you would on your traditional mortgage, which is very important to remember. But as far as the payment is concerned, right, you have full flexibility. So what we would illustrate is, let's say this goes on for 2 more years. Let's say you've almost paid off your house, and we have this need to pay off our homes, which is a whole nother psychological thing we could get into. People think they need to pay off their homes. That's a psychology question. You pay it off to free up your mortgage payment, right? It's a cash flow equation, not because there's any great benefit to having a free and clear home. In fact, it stinks because you have no economic return in your equity, right? And so it's really that's a whole retraining of the mind thing too. But so now you have the option. So we would illustrate as, let's assume for 24 months, you don't make a payment, because the economy continues to be rough and bouncy and whatever else. And then we see recovery, and 24 months from now, everything's back. You're confident again. You go back to making the payments you were making. So what does that look like in the future? Well, you might add a year or two onto your payments in the future, right? So you might not pay off your home as soon as you would have if you plan to pay off your home, which again is debatable to begin with. But at the same time, you've set up this line of credit that the interesting thing is your credit line grows every single month. I think we talked about this a little last time about how that credit line grows, which a lot of people don't understand. So by the time you now fast forward, so let's say somebody's in their 60s and does this, right? They do this, they don't pay for 24 months, they go back to making their payments. Well, you fast forward 5, 7, 10 years, they're now in a position where their mortgage is either paid down or they're managing the debt comfortably. Maybe they're just making interest-only payments, but the credit line is growing. So now they may have $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 available to them in a credit line that they can access if they need it.
Ryan, is a reverse mortgage a viable retirement strategy?
100%, absolutely. To me, it's a great complement to an existing plan, right? As a standalone, it's moderately interesting, right? Because you can free up your mortgage payment, and that there's some upside there. If you're constrained to make your mortgage payment, it's nice for that. But when you use it as a complement to all of your other strategies, to me, that's where it really gets fascinating. And that's where financial advisors and professionals are starting to really take a legitimate look at this and starting to integrate it into their overall planning, because it becomes this complementary tool that we now have access to additional funds to move in and out of, to allows. And so here's a common one I just talked to a guy yesterday about, which was he was in a position where he needed to take a little more risk than he was comfortable with in his investment portfolio in order to hit the returns he needed, right, to meet his retirement objectives. Okay. But the risk there, if I take more risk, that comes with more downside.
Right.
And so if I happen to be so unlucky as to hit the downside of that risk equation, I'm toast. So you're really rolling the dice. So in this case, we're able to put the line of credit in place. So we knew we essentially had a buffer or a floor where if he saw those downturns, he had an alternative he could pull that income from, allow the portfolio to recover. And now you get sort of back to receiving those kind of projected average returns as opposed to annual returns, which is what really hurts people when it comes to that kind of sequential return in retirement.
good news you can use for your life. If you wanna get the info that'll help you throughout your life, yeah.